Hi guys, this is well, it's quite a niche video actually today. It's about the last 12 lines or so of Latin from the GCSE set text, so Aeneid book 6. Aeneas is meeting with Dido in the underworld. So if we just have a look at the preceding 4 lines, but the orders of the gods which now compel me, this is Aeneas speaking, to come through these shadows, through places neglected with squalor, and through the deep night drove me by their commands. Nor was I able to believe that I was bringing so great a grief as this on you by my departure. This is Aeneas just realizing he's speaking to Dido. He's just realized that his leaving Carthage has troubled Dido so much that she has in fact taken her own life, hence why he is meeting her in the underworld. But if we actually move on to our section then, so we're looking beginning line 4, 6, 5. So he's still speaking to her. We can see that from the first two lines of this hymn speaking. The first thing he does is he uses an imperative. He says, halt. Halt your gradum, halt your step. And then the que there, so we want to and. Subtrahe is another one, but with ne, so it's kind of and don't remove, don't take away. And the object of that verb is te, so don't remove yourself from aspectu nostro, from literally our sight, but our is going to come to mean here from my sight. And then, very reminiscent of a question that Dido asked Aeneas, quem fugis, whom do you flee? Whom do you flee? Are you running away from me? What are you running away from? So whom do you flee? And then he says that hoc est extremum. This is the last thing. This is the final thing. Fato, by fate, quod te adloc, or which I say to you, which I address you with. And that's the end of his speech. That's the last thing that he does, in fact, say to her. And then he says that, well, Aeneas is our new subject here, and talibus dictis, with such words does Aeneas lenebat. Perhaps kind of, because it's imperfect, we might want to translate it as try to soothe, try to lessen, try to soften her. And she's described as ardentem, which we've seen before. She is blazing. And she is also tuentem. She is also looking, and she's looking taller. She's looking fierce. And she's looking fierce, and then we have what's called an accusative of respect. She's looking fierce in respect of her heart. So the bit of her that is looking fierce is in fact her heart. Accusative of respect, sometimes quite difficult to translate into English. But yeah, so he tries to soothe her, blazing and looking fierce in her heart. And he ciebat lacrimas, and he began to rouse tears. So he begins to make her cry. But she, aversa, PAP, so having turned away, she tenebat, she was holding, and the object of tenebat, her oculos, her eyes, which are described as fixos. They are fixed, and they are fixed solo, they are fixed on the ground. So her eyes are fixed on the ground, and so she's holding them and turned away. And nec magis, and no more moeta is she moved. So she is moved no more by his sermone, which is described as incepto, by his speech that is described as having been begun. She's not moved in respect of her expression. Another accusative of respect here. Okay, so the bit of her that is not moved is her expression. So no more is her expression. Perhaps we might almost want to translate it as though it's the subject. As no more is her subject moved by the speech that he has begun. Quam si, than if. So comparison here. Than if she stet, than if she stood as dura silex, as hard flint. So no more was she moved than if she was stood as hard flint, or Marpesian, and cautes here literally means rock, but we might want to translate it as marble, because Marpesos was a mountain in Paros, which was famous for its marble. So the point is that obviously she is unmoving, so she's not moved. She's no more moved than if she stood as hard flint or Marpesian marble. So if we just have a look at this section, the translation, so we can see, halt your step and do not remove yourself from my sight. Whom do you flee? This is the final thing by fate, which I say to you. With such words did Aeneas try to soothe her raging and fierce glaring heart, and he stirred tears. She, having turned away, held her eyes fixed on the ground, and her expression is no more moved by the speech he has begun than if she stood as hard flint or Marpesian marble. So I think I've changed my mind here, that you can see that when it says he stirred tears, I think that's rather than, because obviously Dido, the point is that she doesn't react at all. I think I said earlier that she's the one that starts crying. That's absolutely not the case. It is actually, in fact, it's Aeneas who starts crying here. So again, if we move on to the last 5 lines, so tandem, we know tandem at last, and corypuit is, so she is the subject, Dido is our subject, so she snatched, and the object of corypuit we can see is say, okay, which is the same as say. So she snatched herself, and she refugit, and she fled. And where did she flee? She fled in nemus umbriferum, into the grove, and the grove is described as shady. But through all of this, she is described as inimica, literally the opposite of an amica. She is the opposite of a friend. So she is described as an enemy, or she is hostile, or she's full of hate, something like that. And she goes into the shady grove where her conjunx pristinus, is her husband, and pristinus means former. And he respondet, he replies to her curies, to her cares. He replies to her cares. And he also aequat, he equals his, and he equals her amorem, her love. And obviously his name, importantly, is Sichaeus, okay, where her former husband, illy here is a possessive dative. He responds to her cares and he equals her love. And his name, Sichaeus. Nec minus, no less, Aeneas, who is described as percussus carsu. He is struck by her fate. So he is struck by her fate, and her fate is described as iniquo, as literally unequal, but often equus means to do with justice as well. So he is struck by her unjust fate. And he prosequiter, he follows with tears. So yeah, he's definitely the one who cries. He follows with tears, and he does it longe. He does it from afar, so he doesn't get too close. He keeps his distance. And he pities her, miserata. He pities her, present participle, as she goes, while going. As she goes. There we go. So again, if we move on and have a look at the translation for this section. At last she snatched herself, and full of hate, fled back into the shady grove where her former husband Sichaeus responds to her concerns and matches her love. No less does Aeneas, struck by her unjust fate, follow her from afar with his tears and pities her as she goes. And there we have it. Those are the final 12 lines then of the meeting between Aeneas and Dido, the final 12 lines of Dido's appearance in the Aeneid. And obviously, well, you can see there, it's all to do with unrequited love on both their parts, I think.